It's the dictionary. Dictionary. It's the dictionary. Dictionary. It's the dictionary. Dictionary. It's the dictionary. It's the dictionary.
Hello, word nerds, and welcome to the dictionary. My name is Spencer, and this is episode F13. I was thinking about having a guest on this episode, but just a couple of days ago, I recorded with Jeff Nucera, and the word fairy just happened to pop up in that episode as well with a little bit of a unique spelling. And so we talked a little bit about it there. And so I don't feel like I need to go too deep into that world in this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and record this one myself. But before we get to the words, I would like to read an email from a friend and past guest, Dan Jeremy Brooks. He sent me an email about the word kayfabe. If you are checking out all the episodes, there was one of the pre-F bonus episodes where I was reading the new words that were added to Merriam-Webster in September of 2023, and one of the words was kayfabe, and I had never heard of this word before. And he sent me an email. He did want me to say that, of course, this is all his own research. So, you know, if there's anything wrong, you can talk to him about that. But I'm just going to read you this email because I thought it was pretty interesting. Let's see. Regarding the etymology of kayfabe, I believe it goes back to the early 20th century U.S. during the heyday of traveling carnivals around the 1890s to 1940s. Carnival workers, often called and sometimes derogatorily called carnies, would arrive in a new city a day or two before their show to set up the tents, acts, animals, etc., and would place a collect call to their loved ones back in whatever city they came from, or they were from. They'd use the false name K. Fabian, so that when the operator would ask the loved ones if they'd like to accept the charges from K. Fabian, they would say no and hang up. This was a way for carnies to notify folks that they had arrived someplace safe and sound without their family having to spend any money. That's pretty smart. From what I understand, the abbreviated term kayfabe came into use by the carnival workers as a shorthand for not breaking character or committing to the bit, while in the presence of the city locals who'd bought tickets for the show. Kayfabe was like a kind of code word for carnies when they would shill a rube, meaning con a local yokel out of their money through double talk and the like. Carnivals would always have a worker selected to take money in exchange for tickets at the entrance, but their secondary unofficial job was sometimes to spot suckers, people who appeared overly guileless and gullible. That probably would have been me. They'd surreptitiously place a small chalk mark on the back of their clothing. This alerted the workers inside that this person would likely be more susceptible to a short con operation. As they say, a fool and his money are soon parted. Thus, you would often hear to this day that so-and-so is an easy mark. That's the chalk mark, aka someone easy to take advantage of. I assume that because pro wrestling in the U.S., that is, the theatrical kind that's choreographed with pre-decided outcomes, became pretty well established in the same time period as carnivals were also enjoying immense popularity. That's why the term kayfabe was adopted by the wrestling industry. In fact, I think a lot of the early fakery wrestling started as a sideshow in traveling carnivals. I'm sure you know that there's a whole slew of industry terms and slang that developed out of pro wrestling, a lot of which is still used, but one of my favorites is the word jabroni. This gets a little bit off track of kayfabe, but it's still pretty interesting. Jabroni. Nowadays, it's mostly used derogatorily, but what it used to mean was a wrestler who was predetermined to lose a match. It probably comes from the word jobber, as in one who is just doing their job. Typically, no one liked being selected as the jabroni in a match, but it was all part of the job, which was to maintain the illusion of kayfabe. It all comes back. Anyway, hope this illuminates that a bit more for you. I'm writing this from the memory of books and articles I've read about this stuff over the years, so the veracity of some parts may be iffy. So anyway, I just wanted to shout out Dan Jeremy Brooks again and give you a little bit more information as to where kayfabe came from, in case you were as confused about it as I was. Okay, now off to the words. Off to the races, off to the tracks. Here we go. The first word in this episode is fair market value. 3 words, noun from 1901. A price at which buyers and sellers, with a reasonable knowledge of pertinent facts and not acting under any compulsion, are willing to do business. I feel like I need to reword this a little bit to make it maybe more clear for some people. A price at which buyers and sellers are willing to do business. Maybe that didn't help. These buyers and sellers have a reasonable, where did it go? Have a reasonable knowledge of important facts about the thing that they are buying and selling. They are not acting under any compulsion. So there's not like an outside force forcing them to do this buying or selling. And they are willing to do business at this specific price. The fair market value. We know what the market is. We know what the fair value is. So it's the fair market value. Yes, that was great. Good job, Spencer, at putting that in other words, I guess. Okay. I don't have any knowledge of anything to give a fair market value to, so don't ask me for that sort of thing. Okay, what is my sound effect going to be? It's going to be... The next word is fair-minded. 2 words with a hyphen. Adjective from 1874. Marked by impartiality and honesty. And the synonyms are just and unprejudiced. Just like justice, like fair, and unprejudiced, meaning I'm right in the middle. I don't favor one side. I'm not prejudiced to one side or the other. I'm right in the middle. Fair-minded. I would like to think that I am fair-minded. I may have mentioned, maybe possibly in the previous, at some point, I don't know. When I was in junior high, I did a little bit of this peer mediation where I would act as this middle ground person to help settle a dispute between 2 other schoolmates. And so I would like to think that I am a fair-minded person. I'm impartial. I am honest, brutally honest, probably honest to a fault at sometimes. So yes, sure. And I think we need more people who are fair-minded. I think there are way too many people who are, looking for what can they get. And I think we just all need to be fair to all the people out there, because there's a lot of people out there, and they all deserve love and respect. Fair-mindedness is a noun. Next is fairness doctrine. This sounds interesting. It is a noun from 1967. A tenet of licensed broadcasting that ensures a reasonable opportunity for the airing of conflicting viewpoints on controversial issues. And I feel like the idea of the fairness doctrine might actually be a little controversial. So I think basically what it's saying is that when you are maybe a news channel, a news station, a news show, or something like that, and you are talking about a controversial issue, you are supposed to, in journalism, it doesn't say specifically journalism, but you are supposed to show both sides and be fair to both sides of the issue. But the first example I can think of where this gets a little skewed factually is when you're talking about climate change and you have one person who is saying that climate change is real, like a scientist, and you have another scientist that's saying that it's not real. The problem is that makes people think that it is a 50-50 split, that half of scientists think it's real and half of scientists don't. But in reality, at least when I was hearing people talk about this, it was like 97% of scientists say it's real and 3% say it's not. And it honestly, at this point, might be even more skewed towards maybe 98 or 99% say it's real. And not even just scientists, but of maybe just the general population as well. So it is skewing the perception of what it is. So like for people who are maybe undecided, when they see one on either side talking about it, they may think that you see what I'm saying? It skews their perception of what the reality is. And hey, these are facts. We know that climate change is real, so we're not even going to talk about that anymore. Okay, but I mean, it's in it seems like a reasonable idea, this fairness doctrine, to give both sides of the coin. But I feel like in certain contexts, maybe it's not the most helpful thing. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Fair play, 2 words, noun from 1595. Equitable or impartial treatment, and the synonym is justice. What is fair? So yeah, the treatment that is done to a person if they did a good or a bad thing. If the treatment is fair and equitable, impartial, fair to what they did, then that would be fair play. It's all fair play in love and war. Fair shake, noun from 1830. A fair chance or fair treatment. You got to give everybody a fair shake. Why shake? What's the shake about this thing? I don't get it. I don't get why shake, but it's just what we've been saying for almost 200 years, so we're just stuck with it. Blah, 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 blah. Fair spoken, 2 words with a hyphen, adjective from the 15th century. Pleasant and courteous in speech, as in a fair-spoken youth. So this youth, who is fair-spoken, is, they're very courteous, they're nice, they're very nice in what they are saying. And that's nice to hear, because not everybody is fair-spoken. Flap, 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 flap. Fair trade, 2 words with a hyphen. This is a transitive verb from 1947. To market a commodity, so you're sending a commodity to market in compliance with the provisions of a fair trade agreement. And fair trader is a noun. So this is the action of fair trading. It's following the provisions of the fair trade agreement, which we are going to talk about shortly. But first, we got to go flap, 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 flap. Now we're going to talk about fair trade, 2 words, no hyphen. This is a noun from 1932. So this is a little bit earlier than the verb. Number 1, trade in conformity with a fair trade agreement. And yes, it's coming up. Number 2, this is a long one. A movement whose goal is to help producers in developing countries to get a fair price for their products so as to reduce poverty, provide for the ethical treatment of workers and farmers, and promote environmentally sustainable practices. All things that I think are just friggin' dope as hell. Let's talk about the next one on this same track. Flap, 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 flap. Fair trade agreement. And here, fair trade is 2 words with a hyphen. Noun from 1937. So let's just real quick show that the idea of fair trade, doing all of those good things for the people in the developing countries, was 1932. 5 years later, there was an actual fair trade agreement, and I think I should put a link in the show notes for fair trade agreement, so you can go read up more on that. But what does this have to say? It's pretty short. It's an agreement. I assume this was an actual thing, because you see products that say fair trade, blah, 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 and it's an agreement. So it is an agreement between a producer and a seller that commodities bearing a trademark, label, or brand name belonging to the producer be sold at or above a specified price. So the person who made it said, this is the price that I would like it to be sold at. And then the agreement says, yes, we will sell it at that price or more, not less. More at that price or more. And that because we are agreeing that we are being fair in our trading. Maybe the person who made it, they traded that good, that item for something in return, something that they needed or wanted or money or whatever. And then the person who got that item is going to go ahead and sell it to somebody else. And it's all done fair trade. I like the idea of this. We have a store in my town that I think everything has come from these developing countries, and they were all done in this fair trade way, which I think is just wonderful, and I want to see more of it. And yeah, I think this deserves a link in the show notes. Fair use, 2 words, noun from 1847. This is a complicated thing right here. We got a lot of complicated stuff in this episode. This is a legal doctrine that portions of copyrighted materials may be used without permission of the copyright owner, provided that use is fair and reasonable, does not substantially impair the value of the materials, and does not curtail the profits reasonably expected by the owner. So let's just break down each of those a little bit more. So it's saying, you can use the thing that I created as long as, so without paying me, as long as, first of all, it's fair and reasonable. I guess that's a little possibly up for debate. It's a little wishy-washy. It does not impair the value of the materials. So it doesn't, so the value of this thing, it doesn't hurt that value. So people still want to pay that value. You're not bringing that value down in any way. You're not disparaging it. You're not talking about it, using it, making it look worse. Does not curtail the profits reasonably expected. Yeah, a similar idea. It's not hurting the money that could possibly be made. You're not making it, again, look bad, so less people want to buy that thing. Yeah. I think, yeah. And so this gets into the world of all of those copyright usage things. It's incredibly complicated. There's like Creative Commons and all these different levels, and I only know like the tiniest little bit, but you know, I deal with like royalty-free music sometimes in my job, and so you know, sometimes you gotta, depending on like the website where you get the music from, you gotta make sure, or the sound effects, or stock imagery, you gotta make sure that it is allowed to be used in the type of thing that you're using it in, and it gets very complicated. And there are lawyers who like literally just work only in this world. Yeah, that's it for fair use. Fairway. Noun from 1584. Number 1A, a navigable part of a river, bay, or harbor. So any of those bodies of water, if you can navigate through it, that is the fairway. It's the way that is fair? I guess fair here, it's being used as like, it's not bad, it's not rough waters, it's just fair. It's not like really, really great, it's just middle of the road. It's an easy fairway. But we also got 1B, an open path or space. Just a walking path is a fairway. Number 2, the closely mowed part of a golf course between a tee and a green. And yeah, I guess this is called a fairway because it's just the middle of the road. Nice grass. It's not the rough where the grass is really long and it's hard to hit the ball with your club, and it's not the sand trap, and it's not the water hazard. It's just fair grass. It's nicely mowed. It's beautiful and green, and that's where you want to hit the ball. You started at the tee, you hit the ball to the fairway. In an ideal circumstance, you're not hooking and slicing unless you meant to, and then you hit it from the fairway to the tee, which is a whole different type of grass. That one, I think it's probably even shorter than the fairway. I'm not entirely sure of the specifics, but so like is the fairway, so you got the rough grass, and then you got the fairway, and then is the tee like it's like so smooth, it's even better than the fairway. Because it's the green, it's the tea. Not the drink tea, the tea. I've only gone golfing a couple of times. I don't have a lot of personal experience with golfing. Second sound effect. Here we have fair weather, 2 words with a hyphen, adjective from 1736. Number 1. Loyal only during a time of success, as in a fair weather friend. Oh, that friend is doing great, making lots of money, being all popular and nice and great and cool, so I'm going to be their friend right now. But then, when they get all mean and nasty, I'm not going to be their friend. But I think more so we see this with sports teams. When the sports team is doing great, you're a fair weather fan. But when the sports team is not doing so great, you're like, I didn't like them anyway. That's a fair weather fan. I don't follow the sports so much. I have a little bit here and there, and so I guess I could be called a fair weather fan, but I don't claim myself to be a hardcore fan when they're doing well. I'm just like, yeah, my Chicago teams are doing well, so of course I'm going to support them and maybe watch the games. But so I guess I would be this, but not in any way that's like, I've always been a fan. What are you talking about? No, I'm not like that. I am an upfront fair weather fan. What else? Number 2, suitable for or done during fair weather, as in a fair weather sail. So I guess this is a sail on a boat, and this sail is it's good for fair weather. When the weather is just fine and breezy, easy and breezy, beautiful cover girl, then you can use this sail. Are there sails that you want in different types of weather? I'm not so sure. You got to put up the fair weather sail. You got to put up the bad weather sail. What? I don't know. I don't know the sailing, as I have said many times before. On the topic of weather, I am recording this on Thursday, October 10th, and just last night, Hurricane Milton touched down in Florida, and this of course is just a couple of weeks after I think Helene was the other hurricane, and so that whole southeast portion of the United States has just gotten wrecked with not fair weather. They have been getting some of the worst possible weather, and my heart goes out to them. I know a number of people who have been displaced, who have had to evacuate, who are trying to raise funds for whatever they're dealing with. And so I hope that everybody has gotten out and is safe. I know of at least a couple of people who did evacuate a couple of days ago, and maybe more than that. But, there's a lot of people who did not decide to evacuate, and I hope they're doing okay. I don't know if I know any of them personally, but I don't care if I don't know you personally. I hope you're okay. I hope you're okay. Okay. Next is fairy. Noun from the 14th century. Number 1, a mythical being of folklore. I feel like I have to say it in a different voice. A mythical being of folklore and romance, usually having diminutive human form and magic powers. Ooh. Fairies, where did maybe it's in the next episode. Yes, I talk about fairy tales. Like, why fairy tales? And I think it's just, fairies are just everywhere. And we all want to believe in fairies. And some people like my niece when she was little would make these little fairy land things with tiny little houses and things, and they were oh so cute. And fairies are just all over the place. I think lots and lots of different cultures have their own versions of fairies, and people want to be fairies. People will dress up as fairies, which is fun to see, and they're just nice. Except in Labyrinth, that maybe they're not so nice. They bite you and maybe do other things. They don't really dig too much into why fairies are not so great in Labyrinth, but Hoggle wants to take them all out. Number 2, for fairy, this is usually disparaging, and it is a male homosexual. But also, like, just calling somebody a fairy doesn't mean that that person is a male homosexual. The person might just be saying, first of all, they're just being mean, because that's usually why they would be doing that. Just to say, you are less of a man. This is the conversation that Jeff and I had a few episodes ago. That you're less of a man, I don't even know. It's stupid. Don't use this in a mean way. If you want to call yourself a fairy, or if you're friends with people and you say this back and forth to each other in a fun, friendly way, that's fine. But just don't be mean, please. Okay. Great. I think I solved it. Wonderful. Fairy is an adjective. Fairy-like is also an adjective. And this word is from the Middle English fairy with an IE at the end, which means fairyland. Interesting that the word fairy just means fairyland. I feel like there's something missing there. It also means enchantment. From the Anglo-French fairy, from fée, which means fairy, from the Latin fata, with a capital F, which is the goddess of fate. Who? Interesting. The goddess of fate, from fatum, which means fate. And because Jeff Nucera's episode is fresh on my brain because it actually aired this morning, there is also the word fathu, spelled F-A-D-O, which means fate. And so it seems like these words are all related. Everything is related. I don't know how it went from fate to enchantment, fairyland, fairies. I don't know. Flap, 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 flap. That's the sound of the fairy wings. Maybe the sound of the wings of the fairy godmother. Noun from 1839. A generous friend or benefactor. Oh, you helped me so much. You gave me money. You found a place for me to live. Maybe right now with the hurricanes, there's a lot of fairy godmothers out there helping the people who had to evacuate, or maybe they didn't, or whatever, and they need a lot of help. And so we need a lot of fairy godmothers right now coming in, maybe not asking for anything in return, just helping out of the goodness of their heart. And I salute you, fairy godmothers. Why fairy godmother? I mean, does this literally come from the fairy tales? I guess they are the ones who would come in and help the protagonist, the person who's dealing with the problem, and the fairy godmother comes in and helps. And so that then got translated into the real world of people who needed help, and they're like, I'm gonna help, I'm gonna be your fairy godmother. We could have fairy godfather, we could have fairy godparent, we could have just awesome person. Flap, 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 flap. Fairyland. Noun from 1590. 1. The land of fairies. Wow, that's a little on the nose. The land of fairies, it's called the fairyland? Number 2. A place of delicate beauty or magical charm. We all would like to get away from our real lives and go live in a fairyland where everything is perfect and delicate and beautiful and has magical charm. the world of Labyrinth, because that's always the first place my brain goes to of this sort of fairyland, fantasyland kind of place. And it's got both. It's got all sides of the really wonderful and the not so wonderful. And, you got to have balance, I guess. The last word is fairy ring. 2 words. Noun from 1599. This is number 1. Oh, this is... number 1's a long one. It is a ring of... Basidiomycetes mushrooms produced at the periphery of a body of mycelium, which has grown outward from an initial growth point. Also, a ring of luxuriant vegetation, especially when associated with these mushrooms. I think I need to... What is this? A ring of mushrooms produced at the periphery of a body of mycelium. So you got the body of the mycelium in the center, I guess, and then these other mushrooms are in a ring around it. What? Has grown outward from the initial growth point. Yeah, there's the initial growth point, and then they come outward from that, I guess. And a ring of luxuriant vegetation, especially when associated with these mushrooms, is a fairy ring. And I suspect that people called these fairy rings because they were like, this looks just like way too perfect to have come from nature. It must have been planted by fairies. There must be fairies that live here. This is a real thing that you can see. And I think a lot of people of my age, my generation, probably know these pretty well from Mario. I believe Super Mario 64, was that the name? There were areas where there was like a ring of plants or something, and if you ran around those plants, there would be a special thing that would pop up in the middle. And of course, mushrooms, of course, the red and white mushrooms pop up all over the place in the Mario world. And so it's all connected, it's all related, and I think that Mario was doing some psilocybin mushrooms. Yeah, it's I remember seeing somebody post a picture of one of these rings in real life, and they were like, this makes me feel like I want to run around in a circle and get a star, or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, it's a real thing. Number 2, a mushroom that commonly grows in fairy rings. So the mushroom itself is called a fairy ring, and it is especially the species name Marasmius. What is this word? Oriades? Something like that. So it's the fairy ring and the fairy ring mushroom. So now I'm going to pick a word of the episode. Today we had fair market value, fair-minded, fairness doctrine, fair play, fair shake, fair spoken, fair trade, fair trade agreement, fair use, fair way, fair weather, fairy, fairy godmother, fairy land, and fairy ring. And I'm sort of torn between, let's see, I mean, fair-minded is good, fair trade in general, just the idea of fair trade is pretty friggin' great. Let's see, fairy, I like fairy godmother, maybe fairy godmothers are doing fair trade because they're good like that, they're good people like that. I think the runner-up is fairy godmother, but I will pick fair trade as the word of the episode because fair trade is really great. You gotta give the stuff that's fair for the stuff. You gotta... This is a bad song. Let's keep things simple, Spencer. Okay, let's keep things simple. Fair trade, fair trade. I'm gonna trade you this thing for that thing, and it's a fair trade, or as what they said in Dancing with Wolves. I think he said good trade. He traded I don't know, like a chest thing for another thing, and he said good trade. Fair trade. It's pretty important. On that note, let's talk about a couple of movies that I watched. Where's my list? Let's bring up the list, the movie list, the never-ending movie list. Let's see. Beetlejuice. Well, I called it Beetlejuice 2 here, but it's really called Beetlejuice. And I really hope that I kind of hope that there's a third one, because then everybody's going to say, Beetlejuice. Oh my God, here he is. This movie was actually pretty fun and pretty good. I get worried about these sequels or reboots that come so many years later, especially in this overly used CGI world. And I have to tip my hat to Tim Burton, who has been using a lot of CGI in his stuff. And he went back to his roots a bit with this one, with a lot more practical effects and puppets and things like that. And of course, there is CGI, but it's not like a lot of other movies that we see. And so I thought that was very good. I was a little worried, and it will never have the charm, the newness of the first one. Of course, that will always be in our hearts so much. But I thought it was wonderful and entertaining and very fun, and we got a lot of new characters, which are great. So I definitely recommend Beetlejuice. And then what's this one? Sisters. I have to admit, I cannot remember what this is based on the title. So let me just quickly look up this on our good friend IMDb. I hope that everybody is listening to my wonderful movie talk. Oh, yes. Very silly movie. Tina Fey and Amy Poehler. You can't go wrong with them. Sisters. Just watch it. If you want just a really fun, goofy comedy, watch Sisters. It's great. Okay, that's it for this episode. Thank you very much for checking out this show, and please go be a fairy godmother to somebody who needs it. And if you have the opportunity to trade something, do it fairly. This has been Spencer dispensing information. Goodbye.